All right, welcome everyone who's joined today's webinar. This is Metalogic's monitoring tool. Like Larry explained earlier, it's the diagnostic manager tool. Very different from some of the tools that you guys are probably used to in your everyday life and monitoring SharePoint, right? There's a lot of tools that can help you monitor networking, right? Maybe Scum, and then networking and some SQL tools. This is a SharePoint-specific monitoring tool. So we do monitor SQL, right? So as you can see here on my topology here, I'm using a one-tier farm, but I do have a SQL server that we're able to monitor its resources, the log files, the database files, the databases that are hosted. We're able to monitor fragmentation and auto growth. Larry did mention that, how important that is to be able to monitor that in your SQL environment. So again, this is more of a SharePoint specific monitoring tool, but we do have a plugin here for the SQL server just in case if you currently are not monitoring proactively SQL, this tool can also help you. Now, before I show some of the functionalities, I always like to use a quick analogy just to explain the tool. I see this tool really like a dashboard on our cars, right? So the same way that our dashboard gives us little warning lights when something might arise that could become a potential issue. Check engine lights, right? The oil lights, the gas lights, right? These are just warnings, right? That if we don't take action, it's going to become a problem. So we are able to set alerts and be able to set these thresholds. That way you're able to receive offline notifications when it's a warning or when it's something that is critical. And we're able to see, again, this is a dashboard, right? We're able to see the resources at a glance, SQL Server, my SharePoint server, monitor pages. But here my active alerts, this is where I was explaining about the dashboard, right? So here we're able to see these alerts, and I'll show you some of the, in bulk, what those alerts look like. But anytime you see an alert, not only is it going to show here in the dashboard, but you're already going to be able to receive an email. So for instance, I have here a log file, so size is high, right? So this is pertaining to my SQL server, and there's a lot of metrics for your SharePoint server, but they're not currently alerted here in my active alerts for my 2010 farm. But as you can see, we give you some knowledge base, right? We tell you the server that it's on, the actual instance, the level of severity, right? So warning, the thresholds, a quick metric trend graph here, as well as I can change the timeline here in hours or days, right? But as well as a knowledge base, right? So it tells me a little bit of the error, tells me a quick fix, right? That way I'm able to find out what it's all about, right? And one of the neat things about the tool as well here with the specific here is I'm able to also edit the knowledge base. That way, instead of, if I see the error again, instead of reinventing the wheel, I can just come here, edit the knowledge base and say, hey, this is what I did to fix this. That way we have a little bit of a trail of, that way we're saving time. So again, these alert thresholds are coming here. This is the dashboard right here, right? So let's look at some of the things that we're actually monitoring. So again, this is just a synopsis. We go to resources. We'll see another review overview here, but let's look into CPU, right? So again, this is the actual server, the actual machine, right, where SharePoint is actually installed, right? As I can see, my CPU usage, right? I can see the processor queue length, my interrupts, and I can also expand this. So if I want to see my my total CPU usage, I can actually expand this, change the metrics a little bit here so I can see more of a time metric here, so I'm able to compare on intervals. So for instance, if you receive a lot of complaints and the poll is really gonna tell us, how you guys are actually proactively going by monitoring your SharePoint. But at a specific time, right, do a lot of your users complain at a specific time? So here it's being able to see at a specific interval, right? I could change the intervals, right, 4, 8 hours, right? And this is using current data, right? But we do a collection of metrics where we're able to, if you wanted to see the most freshest metrics here, I can actually collect them. It does take a little bit of time, but this is be able to see real time. But you can also, again, every 3 minutes, this is actually refreshing here. So one of the things that one of our customers, what they did was actually have in their SharePoint room, they actually have 2 big screens where they're just running some of these, because you can run these in parallel. So you're able to run these in your offices, being able to see how your memory usage, right, physical versus virtual memory, very important. Disk space, the percentage of time, percentage that is free, right? So I'm able to expand this again just to show you a little pattern of the tool here. I can see page file as well. right? And then my network, right? The actual network in your SharePoint server, right? This is very important because maybe your network is just slow, right? Maybe that's the reason why SharePoint is going slow and your pages are not performing well. It might just be a bad network connection, right? So being able to monitor this more closely gives you just an at a glance, right? And again, this is very simple, right? Metrics that we're showing you here. This is diving into SharePoint, right, into the monitor pages where I'm going to show you in just a little bit is where this tool really takes off. So again, a lot of moving parts, getting a little bit more deeper into SharePoint specifically, right? We're able to monitor your IIS, very important, right? Your requests per seconds, current versus maximum connections, the actual cache size for your ASP, right? And as well all those web services, right? So all the web perspectives, the connections versus attempts, the total method request per second. I'm going to skip the SQL Server here, but just go into SharePoint. So SharePoint, right? A lot of services that are considered to be huge bottlenecks in SharePoint, and we want to carefully monitor these. So one of the ones that, and Larry touched on this a couple slides, is your search, right? So this is one of the biggest challenges with some environments that we see here at Metalogix, where search, right, your indexing is extremely important. You know, you're indexing 10 million items. You know, people are searching constantly. So being able to monitor this is extremely important. Of course, there's no search in my environment. It's a demo. No one's using it. But in your environment, right, you can as well. And I will share a slide later on where you can try this tool out for 30 days. Try it out in your environment. You know, see the trend in those 30 days so you can have a better synopsis of your environment. But here, I can see my search, right, as well as my indexing. Some great metrics in my indexing here, my active connections, my actual size of my indexer, right? This is some great, and again, we talked about this earlier, but it might be time to offload these services to another server, right? So these metrics will really help you drive that case home and say, hey guys, you know, we do need to offload this, look at the metrics. And one of the great things about the actual tool as well is that we're able to as well, right? If you wanted this metrics, right, we're able to come here on the server report and be able to give you a PDF or an Excel of this report, and you can change, you know, the last month trend, you know, the last week trend, be able to print out these reports, be able to give it to a meeting and say, hey guys, you know, it's time to offload this. Excel calculations. If you guys are running this services in your environment, right, this is another bottleneck within SharePoint. We want to be able to monitor this as well. Okay. All right. Here's just a quick list of all of the Windows services that are related to SharePoint in the specific server. And one of the other things that the tool does as well is, and this is in the ULS log, right? This is step one, right? So we see the error in SharePoint, we see the correlation ID, we search the ULS logs for this error, and we go from there, right? So one of the things that the tool does, if you're running multiple servers, right, no matter how many servers you're running on your farm, right, what we're able to do here, and the Diagnostic Manager tool does is within install, is aggregate all the logs. Right. So what we can do is go through every server, aggregate all the logs. That way you have a unified place to check out the logs. So what I can do here is I can run a report on the last hour, last 4 hours, a custom report, right? Or I can just search by correlation ID, hit the find, and it's going to go through all my logs of all my servers and find those in that ID, right? So it's going to be much easier just, you know, just using the tool right away, right? Just viewing your ULS logs, which is going to be really, really simple. Okay. So I'm going to dive into the pages. This is one of the other topics. I want to stay really close to what Larry was talking about today. The SharePoint Designer, right? So it's great for administrators to be able to design their pages, the branding, it looks awesome, web parts, you know, all the things that make SharePoint look good, right? What happens is some of these web parts, some of these pages start acting a little funny once you start doing some customization. So one of the things that we can do with the tool here, and I'm going to drop down to the monitor pages, is we're able to monitor specific pages, okay? And I still have to show all of the alerts that we alert on, and one of the alerts is the actual performance of the page. So I'm going to actually double click here on my engineering. Okay, and one of the things that we monitor on every page automatically is the page load time and availability. So if there's a page that is not loading, right, so you will set these thresholds. They must, after different milliseconds, if any page within SharePoint takes this many milliseconds to load, I want an email right away, right? Or another email if it's a critical, right? But what we can do, and we're going to do that for every page, we'll tell you what page, right? But one of the things you can do, and if you see this page coming up in these reports, you can be like, I want to know why. I know they're acting up a little bit, slow, but what is it, right? So one of the things we can do, and we'll add a page right here, is I can actually add a page just using a URL, right? And one of the things that we do, right, and like I said, just repeating myself a little bit here, the page availability and load time. But we actually, not only do we get the load time, but we see a component analysis. So this is where we're able to drill down to the specific page and find out what's making this page load slow. So 3 things that we monitor, right? The HTML controls, the web parts, and the web controls. So currently my analysis, my component analysis WSP is not deployed on this farm, but what I can see is, and I think, let me see if I can get it on this one here. Component analysis, yep. So what I can do is hit a detail, right? And it will tell me all the web controls, all the HTML controls, and all the web parts that are in my page. And those are the 3 components that we monitor on each page that are regularly what's slowing down your pages. So not only will we tell you what page, how long it took, right, the availability of that page, but we'll tell you which exact component is making that page go slow. So at that point, and one of the other use cases, right, just going a little off topic, is one of my recent customers as well. What they do is before they push so they have a dev and a prod, right? So they monitor both farms. And what they do first is they create a site and they push all those changes to this site, monitor it for a couple of days with this tool to make sure that the availability, the page load time, it's acting correct before they push it to production. So they're able to test it with this tool, make sure it's not going to cause any slowing down of any pages. And once they test it, they're able to push that into productions with the customizations that they have with the web parts, right? So they're able to do a little bit of testing before they push this out, right? But as you can see, we can monitor the resources of your servers, right? The IIS, the web perspectives, right? The SharePoint service applications like the search, index, Excel, be able to aggregate your ULS logs, be able to monitor specific pages. Again, we're able to monitor SQL as well. So if I click here, I'm able to individually monitor the databases, the fragmentation, the auto-growth settings, being able to see, and of course, I can also see the resources, right? So the actual resources of SQL, because at the end of the day, right, if SQL is acting up, Larry said this as well, they're coming down your door, right? It's inevitable. It's extremely important to your environment. The SQL is right up there in monitoring, just as SharePoint, because it's part of your environment. So we're able to monitor this. So really quick, the last thing I'll show is the default thresholds. This is what you guys are going to do first. So once you guys get the tool, you're going to sit down with your team and you're going to say, what do we want to monitor and what is the threshold, right? And we do monitor content, right? So we can actually monitor the growth of your environment, the total size of your content, as you can see, right? But I can monitor total document size for a farm, right? I can even go to new lists and a site collections. We can monitor this, right? So at any time when a list goes more than 1,000 in a site collection, I want to get notified, right? Depending on your SLAs, right? So there's a lot of metrics here that are going to go right in hand with your current SLAs in regards to your growth of your environment, right? And CPU usage, right? We might want to monitor this, set the thresholds, right? Disks, IIS, right? The request execution time, very important. We want to be able to monitor this, right? So if it goes over 1,000 milliseconds, I want to get a warning. 50,000, critical, right? Memory, the networking of your servers, the page load time. Again, this is the first metric that I was showing you. It's going to monitor every page, but if you want a more specific analysis report, you're going to have to do you're going to have to put it on the monitor pages. Server, right? Excel services. So again, a bunch. Search, right? The search indexer, and then we have SQL Server, right? So very important. We have quite a number of metrics for the SQL Server, but again, log file size total. I'm able to enable this to be able to set the threshold. Once I hit OK, right? It's going to set those, right? And then this is with the email setting, right? So we're able to set up an offline notifications. That way, you're able to be notified offline. But at the end of the day, right, you have the dashboard that I showed earlier to be able to give you that overview of the environment. So one of the things is I left about 50% of the tool. There's so many more functionalities, right? A lot on the content summary, more in-depth information that I would like to share. So please, right, let us know, sales@metalogics.com. We will organize a demonstration one-on-one. And I think, Larry, I'm going to give you back the controls if you can show them where they can actually download this for a demo. But that concludes my demo. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to let us know.
Well, that's perfect, Esteban. It's good that you can go ahead and show them specifically, what we just talked about as far as tips and going ahead and increasing the performance of your SharePoint environment. I think the real key to this, we like this product so much, and we think that it's so important to you that we want you to trial it for 30 days. Take it, turn it up in your environment, see what it shows you. Find out what your environment and how it's set up. So download it, free 30-day, full-featured trial. Conduct your own health check. All you're going to do is find out where you sit today versus where you think you are. And I think that's probably the most important piece. You can go ahead and look at those common problems, that are affecting your SharePoint performance for 30 days. What's better than to come back to your boss and say, hey, guess what? I just increased performance. It would be nicer if, everyone else, the end users, came back and said, wow, how did we just increase our performance? You can always hope. You want to go ahead and, of course, discover and diagnose the performance and availability problems we talked about. Look at those servers. Where are they performing? Where aren't they? And monitor critical areas. Set up your own performance thresholds and see, are you getting those alerts? Obviously, you'll get this page. We follow up with this presentation and access to the audio associated with this presentation today, this webinar. So you'll get that information. And on to the questions. And it's funny. So one of the first questions I see is about Scum that came from our poll. It's, we use Microsoft Scum. How do you guys compare? And the answer is really simple. We actually make Scum better because we're focused on the SharePoint environment. Scum works across your Microsoft applications, and it doesn't dive down to the level of detail that Esteban was able to show you. And that's the reason people, look at Diagnostic Manager. It's got the level of detail and the alerts and the alarms specific to SharePoint that Scum doesn't have. And it can go ahead and take SNMP traps and feed them up to Scum. So should you continue to use the Scum system? Absolutely. You want to make it better? You look at Diagnostic Manager. So another question, let's see. Actually, Esteban, the one that you're answering, do you want to go ahead and take that one?
Yeah, no problem. So we have a question here in regards to the SQL monitoring. So I'll repeat the question. We use SQL Server mirroring always on. What can you show me to monitor that? So currently with our tool, again, this is a SharePoint specific monitoring tool. That's why I made that clear earlier. We do give you a plugin for the SQL monitoring. Currently is the resources, right? The CPU, the memory, right? It is a box, so it does have resources. We in regards to besides the resources, we tell you the databases that are hosted, the fragmentation information and auto growth information, log file size, the disk free space. In regards to always on and server mirroring, there are no specific metrics that we monitor currently for SQL. So what I just explained is what currently we monitor. Again, this is a SharePoint specific monitoring tool with the addition of the SQL plugin.
What I will add to that, to Esteban's information there is, if you're using SQL Server mirroring and the high availability, the always on, one of the questions I have is, do you have geo-distributed farms? Are your farms, over 300 miles apart? Because if they are, some of those issues like SQL mirroring and server mirroring don't work very well once you get beyond 300 miles. And if you are beyond 300 miles or you have geo-distributed farms, the SharePoint farms, go ahead and look at one of our products that's done in a different webinar, and it's called Replicator. I'll just leave you with that. That's for another webinar. We've got another good question there for you, Esteban.
So the question about the developer access?
Yes.
All right, so the question, I'll read it again. Is it possible to give developers access to the page monitoring details without giving them access to everything else? That is a great question. So one of the things that we can do is create reports. So instead of giving them the actual component analysis, right, giving them the tool, you can just print out reports and be able to send them in an email. Right, so we can do that. In regards to stripping away features of the tool for a specific user, we aren't able to do that yet with the tool. It's actually a good idea. But as of right now, in today's release, and as far as I know, the next release, we do not have specific features that we can take out for specific users, depending on permissions or name of users. So the only thing that we could do just to give them that specific component analysis is being able to use the reports that we didn't show today, be able to send them an email with the Excel or PDF of that report.
That sounds great, Esteban. Now, you're more familiar with this than I am. The question they have is, how long does it take to set up? I got a better question. Not only how long does it take to set up, how long does it take to go ahead and have the information you need to do an analysis?
Perfect.
So just that initial piece.
Yeah, so the setup is extremely easy. You can actually set this up on a desktop or on a server. So what we do is we set up the tool here, and there's a couple services that are deployed to grab some of that information, some of the metrics. Normal installation, right? It's about 20 to 25 minutes. But matter of fact, of the 8 tools that we have in Metalogix, Diagnostic Manager is by far the easiest install. So that's why that 30-day trial, we give you a link, because it's literally next. In regards to, analytics and be able to have a good understanding of your environment, I want to say give it a couple days, maybe 2 to 3 days, so it can get a couple metrics and be able to get some of those, because some of the metrics are by days. So be able to give it maybe 2 to 3 days before you start actually looking in the environment, going through the metrics. So about 2 to 3 days, so it can collect some information. But the install is again 20, 25 minutes at the most.
Great, thank you, Esteban. Yeah, someone asked me again about it's generally about a 300-mile limit for SQL mirroring. Once they go beyond that, there's latency, and the latency has a direct effect on the mirroring. So I just wanted to emphasize, yeah, anything that's larger, longer, further than 300 miles. And that's right from Microsoft. Let's see, I think we answered the one about how heavy is this. Yes, this recording will be available after the session. You'll get it in an email as a follow-up. So not only do you get the recording, you'll get the presentation as well.